In Ruben Meiman's iconic TED Talk, The Mathematics of Weight Loss, he asks a very poignant question. When you lose weight, where does it go? Do you burn it as energy? Do you sweat it out? Or maybe you expel it as waste, as urine or feces? Well, with the quarantine in effect, everyone's staying home a lot more. We're moving less and, in often cases, eating more. Isn't that right, Show? So in this episode of Scientific Drinking, we are taking a look at weight loss. In fact, we're taking a look at sedentarism, which means sitting around a lot. So thanks for joining me. Cheers. Hey guys, and welcome to Scientific Drinking. My name is Mas, and as I mentioned, we're talking about sedentarism. This week, I'm drinking the antivirus. Literally, that's what it's called, antivirus, from Dirty Ore Brewing Company. So sedentarism is definitely not a new problem. It's not something that just happened with quarantine, although the quarantine has definitely exacerbated its effects. No, we've seen an increase in sedentarism over the past 50 years. And that sedentarism has been reflected in obesity rates across the country, and in fact, across many countries, but most definitely in the United States, where our access to sugar is ubiquitous, to say the least. Now, the proliferation of sedentarism is most evident perhaps in children, which had an obesity rate of about 4% in 1960, rising up to 20% in 2008. Now, those rates have plateaued, just like the rates for adult obesity rates have also plateaued. But let's back off a little bit. Let's talk about sedentarism and see what connection there is between sedentarism and obesity, and if that's really there. Does one cause the other, or is it the other way around? Well, it's a little bit difficult to answer that question, but it seems that a sufficient amount of evidence has been collected to make the claim and the assurance that yes, there is definitely a connection between sedentarism and obesity. Sedentarism is generally defined as sitting for long periods of time. Now, that's a little bit ambiguous, but it includes all kinds of lethargic activities such as sleeping, laying down, just not moving very much. Now, the opposite of sedentarism isn't necessarily exercise. In fact, there's a little bit of a disconnect between exercise rates and sedentarism and people who just move a lot more and sedentarism. A study from 2008 from Australia shows that there is a definite connection between people who spend more time watching TV and rates of obesity, high blood pressure, and blood sugar. Now, what's interesting about this study is that they looked specifically at people who engaged in MVPA for at least 150 minutes per week. For the layman, such as myself, MVPA stands for moderate to vigorous physical activity. Now, that suggests that exercise alone isn't enough to counteract the effects of sedentarism or just sitting around a lot, things that we're probably doing a lot more now in quarantine than we usually do. Now, the older definition of someone who does not have a sedentary lifestyle is someone who has at least 150 calories burned of MVPA per day. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but 150 calories a day of MVPA adds up to about 1,050 calories per week, and that's going to become important in a minute. So at this point, you may be asking, okay, so what is the correlation between exercise and movement and physical activity and weight loss and sedentarism? Well, it's not as straightforward as just exercising, right? It is the amount of calories burned over a long period of time and consistently. Now, it has been shown in many studies that a more active lifestyle generally correlates to a lower waistline. That should be pretty much common sense. Less sedentarism generally correlates to less cardiovascular disease, lower blood pressure, and lower blood sugar. These studies looked at things like bus drivers versus conductors who moved up and down London's double-decker buses, while the bus drivers sat in the seat for 90% of their day. The conductors had a lot lower rate of cardiovascular disease than their bus driver counterparts. Likewise, a similar experiment with the Postal Service looked at people who were out delivering the mail versus the people who had a more sedentary lifestyle and job sitting inside the post office and sorting letters. It should come as no surprise that the people who delivered more mail and spent more times outdoors moving around and getting their steps in had a lower rate of cardiovascular disease, a lower rate of high blood pressure, and lower blood sugar. Finally, another study in San Francisco took a look at the average lifestyle versus the stevedores, the people who loaded and unloaded cargo from the ships. Obviously, loading and unloading cargo takes a bit more effort than we might find in our daily lifestyles, and naturally they had a lower rate of cardiovascular disease, blood sugar, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing over and over again. It doesn't matter how many times we do the studies, more activity correlates with lower rates and longer lifespan. In fact, it can result in a much higher lifespan. In fact, a study from Harvard looked at people who had a higher than average energy expenditure per day, and it worked out to about 2,000 calories per week. These people were 28% less likely to suffer from cardiovascular disease than their lower energy counterparts. To break that down, 2,000 calories per week for people like me who generally have a sedentary lifestyle, or at least a sedentary job, works out to about 3 kilometers of running per day, assuming that you run every day of the week. 3 kilometers works out to about 1.9 miles. Now that's just running, right? And a lot of us don't like running. I don't like running very much myself. I find myself doing a lot more now than I would before because I can't go to the gym. You can burn energy by lifting weights and just doing some dynamic workouts without having to go through the monotony of running that some of us find excruciatingly boring. But you don't necessarily have to go to the extreme of jogging 1.9 miles, 3 kilometers per day. In fact, it shows that there's this sweet point between 1,000 and 2,000 calories per week where the reduced rate of mortality is most significant. And you don't have to keep increasing your workload and try and reduce those numbers even more. More activity doesn't necessarily correlate to lower risk of fatality. In fact, once you take those numbers to the extreme, such as 4,000, 8,000 calories per week, such as an Olympic athlete might, well, you start having detrimental effects and you might actually be shortening your lifespan. Just like anything else, it's the dose that makes the poison. Now, this correlation between longer lifespans and more active lifestyle can be seen in our children as well. Children who experience at least 60 minutes of MBPA every day, that's 60 minutes of athletic activity, maybe running, playing, just getting outside and doing something, were 4 times less likely to be obese than their more sedentary counterparts. So this is all well and good, but let's talk about what we can really do about it, right? We're all stuck inside. Well, I'm not gonna beat you to death with a home workout routine. There's plenty of those online already. Really, there's plenty, there's tons. You see all these? You see this? This is, wow, that's a lot, guys. Wow. There's no excuse for saying I don't know. YouTube can teach you. But in a nutshell, what you can do is go for walks. It doesn't have to be a run. It doesn't have to be a jog. Just walking is a tremendous help. But if you're so inclined to be more athletic, running or doing home workouts is definitely something that'll help you out. And finally, something as simple as getting a standing desk. If you're working at home like I am, then sitting in front of your computer all day can kind of be, numbing to your lower body. You're just not using your legs at all. So a standing desk would definitely help. In fact, there's a significant difference between standing and sitting. You're burning twice as many calories by standing for 1 hour than you are at sitting. It's better for your circulation, it's better for your muscles, and it's better for your heart. For example, standing up can burn between 100 and 300 calories per hour, while sitting down, you're stuck at between 60 and 130. That's a huge difference. Now, that being said, a more active lifestyle will definitely go a long way to helping you with your health in the long run, but 80% of losing weight, if that's your goal, comes down to diet. And certainly beer isn't helping me lose weight. As you guys know, I love my beer, so I have to balance it out with more activity, and I have to cut the carbs in other places as well. It's all a matter of moving more and eating less, and that's the fundamental rule of weight loss. No special diet, no online gimmick, no special orders online are probably gonna help you reduce weight unless you have the motivation to do it yourself. And I guess that's the true with anything, right? If you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to do it. So like I mentioned in the introduction, Ruben Mieman's TED Talk, The Mathematics of Weight Loss, talk about where your fat goes. And the truth is, you breathe it out. 80% of all the fat you burn, you breathe out as carbon dioxide. And I really encourage you to check out his TED Talk. It's really great, and it really helps you visualize your weight loss in a new way if that's your goal. So join us next time when hopefully we have an interview, but I'm still undecided if I want to do that over Skype. So we might be talking about something else, maybe the history of epidemiology. Oh yeah. Yeah, I know, that's just got you all super excited, but I promise to make it interesting. So thanks for watching, cheers.
Pretty good.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Well,
Wow.